All right, so our recording has started. So welcome everyone. I'm Tisha Johnson, Senior Director of Admissions for ICO, and welcome to our current student panel, if you will. We want you all to have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about ICO in Chicago from our students. I always say that our students are the ones who are, going through the program and the ones who can, best answer your questions on what it's like to be at ICO, what it's like to be in Chicago, what the program's like, why they chose ICO, all those questions that you want to ask and hear from our current students. So I do have some questions that I'll get us started, but we have two features where you can put your questions in. There's a chat feature and there's also a Q&A feature. And so Jeffrey Johnson from our communications team is helping us out in that regard in terms of monitoring your questions. So with that, what I'll do is I'll actually have our students introduce themselves. So I'll call you out, and if you just want to give your name, the year in the program that you're in, and where you're from, that would be great. So we will go ahead and start with Elizabeth.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth. I'm a first-year student, and I'm from North Carolina.
All right, thank you. Angela?
Hi, I'm Angela. I am a second-year student. I'm from the Chicagoland suburbs, and then I went to University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, so go Illini.
All right, Carly?
Hey, I'm Carly. I am also a second-year student with Angela, and I am from Owensboro, Kentucky.
All right, and Vinu.
Hi everyone, my name is Vinu. I am a third-year student here at ICO, and I'm actually one of the Canadian students here, so one of the international kids here.
Awesome. So hopefully we do have some international folks on the call. That would be great. So I guess the first question, I'll start off with you all, is sort of what made you apply to ICO? And I'll start with Vinu.
Coming in, especially as a Canadian student, I had like a bunch of boxes. I was that kid who came in with a checklist and was like, I need this box, and this box checked off at ICO or any other school I went to. And ICO kind of checked off all my boxes. Some of the things on my checklist were I cared about what kind of clinical experience I got, and I thought ICO checked that box. Great. The clinic is right next to campus. It's so convenient, and the patient base is so broad. I absolutely loved it. I love the academic support. I think the tipping fence for me from ICO and all the other schools I was applying for was definitely the academic support available here. So definitely, hopefully we'll get more into that later, but those are the two super big things. Obviously, Chicago, who doesn't want to be in Chicago? So third thing, but mainly those things for me.
All right, Carly.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of the same reasons. So, like I said, I'm from Kentucky, so from a little bit more like rural of an area, and I knew that whenever I learned how to be a doctor, I wanted to be in a bigger city because I wanted to have a more diverse patient base. And I would come to Chicago for like school field trips occasionally in high school, and I just kind of like fell in love with the city for my very first visit here. So definitely just like being in Chicago was a big draw for me. But also kind of like Venus said, the clinical education, I truly wholeheartedly believed is like unmatched at ICO. Like whenever I talked to a lot of other schools or looked at a lot of other websites, they were like, yeah, we get you started in clinic like the summer of your third year, like the summer after your second year. Whereas ICO was like, yeah, we get you started like in your first year. You will be doing stuff with patients. And that like was really unique and stood out to me because I want to have a very clinical focused career. So it was really important to me to get as many patient encounters under my belt as possible. So that was probably the biggest reason.
Thank you. Angela.
Yeah, so I agree with everything said so far. I think something a little bit different for me is because I'm from the Chicago suburbs. I knew that I wanted to stay local, but I also did want to be downtown and in the city. So I also like shadowed and I worked for a bunch of different doctors like throughout the suburbs and everything. And every doctor that like I've gone to myself, they've all been ICO alum, and they always spoke so highly about the school and the network and like kind of like the alumni relationship too, and that ICO alums support ICO alum. They love to like hire each other. They love to work with each other. And so I felt that that was kind of like a big factor too, is that even once you graduate school, you still have that kind of basis of connection.
All right, thank you. And Elizabeth.
Hey, so again, same thing for me. Big city was a really big plus for looking at a program, but specifically going off what Carly said, I just feel we're like so in the downtown area. You know, other big cities that have schools, I felt like it was a little bit removed from the center, but I live like a mile north of the school, and I'm in the middle of it, and I absolutely love it. I worked for a while also before coming to school, so I again wanted that clinical program where, as I learned best hands-on. I had some clinical experience before coming in, so that was really big for me, and I'm already feeling it as a first-year student being in clinic.
Good. And so Elizabeth, I'm gonna stay with you. So when you came to orientation last August, was there anything about ICO, after being here for a few days, that surprised you? Or I know most folks are gonna come, and if they come to interview, you're on campus, for maybe about 5 or 6 hours, so you don't get a chance to really observe and absorb the campus. So after orientation, what sort of surprised you about the ICO campus and environment?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that surprised me in a good way was how invested the upperclassmen are in the success of the first years. The orientation team was I think entirely run by second years, and they just bombarded us with advice, help in a good way, that really made our transition smooth. And going into the second quarter, I still feel that. I talk to a lot of upperclassmen. They always like airdrop me stuff to make sure that I feel comfortable with the material, and they're always like willing to sit down and help.
Okay, awesome. So Angela, you've of course have gone through your first year in the program. What is your sort of typical day like for you now that you're a second year?
For me, usually I'll wake up in the morning, I'll head to school, and then for second year, you usually have your classes in the morning, so like all your lectures. I'm the type of person that actually likes to go in the lecture. All of our classes are live streamed and recorded too, so you could watch it from home or watch it later on. But I just like being in lecture, so I'll go there. I'll usually stay there all day and then have lunch there. Then usually we'll have labs in the afternoon, so I'll stay for labs. And then depending on the nighttime, we usually end at like either your lab under like 3:30 or 5:30. Sometimes I'll stay and I'll go and practice my skills with my friends, or I'll go study with them at their apartment, or sometimes I'll head back home. And then usually then I'll go back home, study for a little bit more. If there's an exam the next day, then usually I study more. But if not, I usually finish off and kind of have a relax at the end of the day and watch TV or something. So that way, like I'm not studying every single second of the day.
All right, good to. And Vino, as a third year, what is your day like? Yeah, oh, you're muted. You're muted, Vino.
Just realized I'm muted. Thank you.
That's all right.
First and second year is really busy. I feel like with all the exams and all the classes coming into third year, it's a little bit more relaxed, and I am so grateful for that. So my typical day now is definitely more clinical than it is more didactic. So I have a double on Tuesdays, so I'm basically at school from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. almost, mostly with clinic with a small break in between. I have clinic Wednesday again, but now I'm put into specialty clinic because that's kind of ICO in your third year. You're kind of rotating through different specialties. So I'm currently in glaucoma, actually loving it more than I thought I would. Thursdays I have lab, and then Fridays and Mondays I have a little bit of a break, but we're definitely studying for boards right now. So my Fridays and Mondays and weekends are going all into boards, full course right now. But it's nice to have a little bit of time in terms of less didactic material to even focus on boards. So I think I'm really appreciative of that, and just that's where my head is at right now.
All right, and Elizabeth, what is first year like? I know it's mostly classes for you as a first year, but you guys also recently started doing more clinicals as well.
Yeah, for us, in the morning, it's either clinic or lab, followed by, afternoon of lecture. First year's a lot of didactic work, so a lot of free time is kind of spent studying. But it's fun to break it up. I mean, I'm on our intramural basketball team, so sometimes we'll just like go straight from lecture and then go play basketball. And having lunch together is like, take a nice break. Our first quarter would like go stand outside in between lectures and like be in the sun. which is really nice. But in the evenings, if it's a night before exam, like Angela said, we're kind of studying, grinding. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, good. And so Curly, question for you. What has been sort of your biggest adjustment that you've made once you started professional school?
There are two. So first of all, I've had to learn how to, like, I guess, manage my standards for myself, I guess. I'm a major perfectionist kind of person, and I, like, will plan out my schedule and my routine to a T. I have a very set way of doing things, whereas whenever you get to optometry school, it's really like a whole different ball game. Like, I was pretty busy in undergrad, but not really to the level that I am in optometry school. So I've kind of had to like change my study methods a little bit. Like I've taken some things that worked for me in undergrad, like flashcards. I'm a big flashcard person, and applied that to optometry school. But then like I never used to be a group studier in undergrad. And talking things out, I found really helps me in optometry school. So I've kind of had to just adopt a more trial and error method of doing things, which I think sounds a little scary at first because you kind of just want to have everything planned out. But trial and error isn't a bad thing. You just have to figure out what works for you. And then the other big adjustment I had to make, honestly, this was kind of more of an adjustment between first and second year, not as much undergrad to first year, but learning how to prioritize mental health a bit better. I think that ICO does a good job of providing you a lot of support resources. We have like a big and little program that one of the organizations runs. We have academic coaching, which like pairs you up with an upperclassman mentor. The school offers free counseling services, but really just kind of learning how to take a step back from school sometimes, be like, okay, eyeball school is incredibly important, but so is my sanity. So like learning how to take breaks, like go for a walk, exercise, like watch a movie, play a game, do something like that, and really take care of myself, has been a big adjustment for me because I've realized that you cannot present your best self to your colleagues, to your attendings, your professors, to your patients. You cannot present your best self to them unless you are really taking care of yourself. So those are a couple of big things that I've had to adjust during my time here.
Yeah, and so for attendees, we do offer at ICO a partnership actually with Christie Campus Health. We actually just started this year. We had previously a relationship with another company, and they do provide services for our students. I would say I've been in ICO for 17 years, and so over that time, we have seen, I would say, more students coming in with and needing assistance with different mental health issues. We've always had a counselor on campus, but because the volume had increased, and I think part of it is also my personal opinion, just society's take on mental health and making it a priority. I would say when I started school, students weren't talking about those things. But now I'm glad we're in a place that more students who need assistance are able to get it. So we have a counseling relationship with Christie Campus Health, and so students are able to see a counselor. There are restrictions on the amount of times you can see a counselor, but you can see a counselor. It's going to be all virtual, where we are now in 2023. But it's really an opportunity for students to seek assistance. And in student affairs, that's sort of what we always encourage students to do. If you have questions, definitely ask. If you need assistance, definitely ask. And I know Vino and I have done a couple of sort of different, presentations, especially to our Canadian clubs. And she talks a little bit about, student support, which she mentioned a little bit earlier. But if you want to sort of give your advice and sort of your take on student support, especially being in the third year, as you mentioned, you have boards going on, which is sort of big for a lot of students. If you want to talk a little bit about sort of, student support and being now as a third year and how you value that, and maybe what you've also used in the past during your time at ICO.
So, like I mentioned earlier, one of the things that kind of blew me away when I came to my interview at ICO was how much they spoke about student support. and how much they actually followed through with it. In undergrad, I never used the resources that were provided to me in terms of student support. So when I came here, I kind of dived in and I was like, I want to be part of, like, give me everything you have. I'll start off with our academic coaching program. I think it is such a tremendous program. Basically, how it works is you're paired up. You get to choose who you want to be paired up with. You'll have like a list of students. They'll put a little blurb about what they like to do, how they teach, or how kind of person they are. You'll pick who you like and you'll be paired with them. You follow through with them for the whole quarter, the whole year, however long you like, and you literally can talk to them about anything. I know one of the biggest obstacles we talk about in graduate school is our grades, and it's not always easy to talk about your grades with your peers because what's good to you or what's great to you may not be good or great to somebody else. So that was something I really struggled with. I couldn't talk to my classmates about it per se because I didn't want to put someone down or I didn't want someone to put me down. And that's where I kind of turned to my academic coach where I'd be like, hey, I didn't do so well on an exam. Can you help me? Like any advice you may have for me to do better. And my academic coach would just kind of walk me through the process, be like, all right, let's figure out what went wrong, where it went wrong. So that aspect really helped me. Sometimes you're just feeling low. You miss your mom, you miss home. I've like texted my academic coach and been like, oh my God, I really miss my mom right now. Like, I'm just sad. And she'll be like, all right, let's go grab a coffee. So I think having that connection, you have your friends. Obviously, those people are so close to you, you're going to bond with them in a different way. But having someone slightly older than you who has a little bit more experience than you kind of walk you through and kind of not pamper you, but in a world where you're so anxious all the time or you're so scared, kind of just calm you down is really nice. I think tutoring is another really great mechanism here at ICO where they literally provide you with all the academic help you need. And my tutors are my friends. They've become my friends. So it's just a great place because you have so much support. Mentally, you can talk about your friends, you can talk about your family, you can talk about your significant other, school, whatever you feel like. And I think not a lot of places offer that. So I love my academic coach. She's like my best friend now. So I hopefully provide the same back. So
Great. I don't know if Angela, if you had anything to add to that about the student support services at ICO in your experience.
Yeah, kind of going off of what Vinu said, that tutors are really great. They're free to use, so you can have as many different tutors as you want, and kind of like go off of whatever style you want. So you can have a tutor that tutors multiple classes, or you can have one tutor for every different class. And then you kind of can work with the tutors and see what kind of style you want, whether you want them to quiz you, help you remember things. We also have tutors for like our clinical labs, so that way like they can come and watch you and see what you're doing for your skills, which that can be really helpful, especially around practical time, because it's good to have someone a little bit older who knows what they're doing, kind of like watch you. And like I've done it with my friends, and like my friends will be switching off between doctor and patient, and then we'll have the tutor come and watch us, and they'll kind of grade us in the background, be like, and tell us what we did and didn't do, which I think is really helpful.
Awesome. And Elizabeth.
Yeah, talking more about the academic coach, I love mine. She's actually also from North Carolina, which is really great. I think that ICO does a good job pairing you. They did that with orientation too. My leader is also from North Carolina. There's 3 of us. So I think that they made the transition, a lot more comfortable for me. I run into my academic coach like everywhere, and we just talk about everything from classes to, going out to go watch a UNC game in a couple weeks. So the tutors, it's such a great system. I just text her and we're going to meet up on Friday to talk about some material that I'm not comfortable with just yet. And so I always feel really good leaving that. So I can't say enough about the student services.
All right, great. So let's talk a little bit about student organizations and student involvement. I always tell students, yes, you're coming to a rigorous academic program, and it's going to be demanding and it's going to take, your time, but you would be remiss if you didn't get involved in student life. Like that's, I feel like the second part of also being in an academic institution, and encourage folks to get involved. And I know all of you have different organizations you're involved with. So I'll again go around and just sort of ask if you can tell us a little bit about the student organizations you're involved with, and how you then balance your involvement then also then with the academic program. So Vino, I'll go ahead and start with you.
So in terms of all these programs, I feel like when you're an undergrad, you feel like, okay, I need to build my application, I need to build a resume, and you go out on a limb and you join everything. When you come to an undergraduate program, you made it, you got here. So I feel like my mentality when I was joining clubs was slightly different. It wasn't so where I was like, I just want to rack up all these clubs. It was more so like, what am I interested in? Optometry has so many different things. There's pediatrics, there's contact lenses, there's neuro, there's so many different subspecialties, and there's a club for absolutely everything. So it was more so about let me join something that I'm truly interested in rather than let me rack up things on a resume or put things on an application. And I think you get so much more from a club when you do that. So I'm part of a few. One thing that was a little different with me was I actually didn't join anything my first year, and that's because I was so overwhelmed with school. I didn't know how to kind of separate going to all these club meetings and attending things versus studying. So first year, I was just like, let me get the hang of school. And then second year, I kind of went out and joined whatever club I was interested in. And I felt like by now I kind of had a better idea of what I wanted and what I didn't like. So I'm part of a few. I'm part of our Canadian Association here. We have a great multicultural association here that I'm part of as well. We have SPOSH, which is one of the bigger clubs at ICO. They go out, they do a few mission trips. I think Angela can probably speak more to that. And then we have Private Practice Club, which is huge. Everybody loves that. They host amazing events. So there's a lot of fun events around school that we absolutely love going to. Carly will probably talk about the student association stuff. We have a prom. You have a special prom just for optometry students. My friend's boyfriend actually did a whole promposal, and it was the cutest thing ever. And he's like, I didn't get to ask you to prom the first time, so let me do it now. So I love those little things that we have here. It makes life a little bit more fun.
All right. Thank you. Yes, and the prom is the eyeball, which I do equate it to like a college prom, if you were optometry school prom. So Carly, if you want to go ahead and talk about your student life experience.
Oh, I could write a novel on eyeball right now because I am currently in the thick of planning that. So one of my hats that I wear on campus is I am the president-elect of Student Association. It's essentially our student government. Every student is considered a member of student association. Every class elects 2 class representatives that get to serve on student association to kind of be the liaison between your class, the other classes, the professors, the administrators, kind of just everyone on campus. But then you can also have a leadership role like on the executive board, and that is in that organization, which is what I do. So we have a lot of really, really fun events with that. So in August, we have ICO Olympics, which is like big kid field day, basically. It's a lot of fun. We all go out to the RC courtyard and we have different shirts for each class. And it's just like a big like competition between all the classes. And it's really, really fun. In the fall quarter in October, we have Boo Bash, which is a big Halloween party. In December, we have an event in a local neighborhood called 12 Bars of Christmas, where everyone goes out and has a good time. But then we have Optometry School Prom coming up in March, which is Eyeball. It's right after our third years take board, so it's like a really big celebration held at a really cool place in Chicago every year. So that's coming up that we're all getting really excited about. But other than that, I really like what Vinu said about in optometry school, clubs are more so for your sake and your own interest rather than like trying to be competitive for something, which is really refreshing. So like all students are part of the American Optometric Student Association, which focuses on advocacy and legislation and stuff like that. I wanted to get involved a little bit further in that, so I actually kind of co-started a new club this year specifically for the Illinois Optometric Association called Student IOA. And we've been getting members for that and having really cool opportunities for that. Because if there's not a club that you want, you can just start your own. It's so easy. But then I'm also in Cornea and Contact Lens Society, and then I'm also in SPOSH. like Vinu mentioned, our next humanitarian trip coming up for SFOSH is Peru in August, which I'll be going to, and I think that I'm just like so excited. That is what I've been looking forward to like my whole time at ICO so far. So there are lots of really cool things to get involved in for sure.
Thank you. And I must say, somehow I convinced Dr. Machinsky, who is our faculty advisor for SPOSH, to let me go on a SPOSH trip. So I went on one in 2017 to El Salvador. I'm not an OD, and let me just say this, but they put me to use, and I learned how to do the acuity chart, which was interesting. And in May in El Salvador, and it was probably like 100, it felt like 100 degrees outside. It was very hot, but it is so worth it. And I would encourage you as students, if you can do a mission trip, it is one of those sort of life-changing things. It really gives you an opportunity to see optometry, or maybe the limitations of how it's practiced in another country. In El Salvador, they didn't have optometrists, so it was ophthalmologists and opticians. So our students they were able to do more than what they really could when they were there. But the patients who they saw are always very grateful. And so that trip was probably about 6 days or so, and we saw maybe 25 to 2,600 patients. But it's definitely, I would say, life-changing. So as a student, if you have that opportunity, definitely participate in SPOSH and be able to do a mission trip. It's definitely worthwhile. Angela, what's your student experience involvement or student organization involvement?
So I'm also in SPOSH. So how SPOSH kind of works is that by your third year, you try to earn 25 hours so you can go on the trip. And you can earn those 25 hours in different ways. So one of the ways that I did was that we had a vision screening. It was at a cultural center in the north side of Chicago, and it was really cool. I went there all day, and so we kind of like switched off on different positions of what you could do within the screening, whether you're doing like VAs or taking pressures or things like that. And it was awesome just because it was helping out somewhere like local, but a lot of these people still haven't ever had eye care, or just haven't had eye care in like a long time. So they were just super appreciative of it. Then there's other ways that you can get your hours where we have like lens sales and frame sales and helping volunteer for that. So there's lots of ways. And then I'm also in private practice club. So I think that's also really cool. Because a lot of times they'll come and have speakers talk about their experiences and their practices, how they started, if they either started like cold and completely open up their own, or if they join another practice and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Thank you. And Elizabeth, have you been able to get involved? I know it's your first year, so I don't know if you took that deep dive in or if you're sort of waiting to maybe second year.
Yeah, I'm actually our first year rep for the private practice club, and I absolutely love it. It is so much fun. I think the best part is that when we go to these events that have ODs or people in the private practice sphere, they treat us like we are also their peers. So we learn again about opening practices, sending out resumes, what you want to like structure your career for, what you may want to do. There's many things you can do in optometry, but they talk to you as if you're already an optometrist, and I've learned so much. There's a lot about personal finance that, I don't ever think it's too early to start thinking about that. And there's really cool stuff too. It's not just like finance. We actually went to a Bulls game together, and it was so fun. It was like my first NBA game in a long time, and it was like so close to the court. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'll check in with Jeffrey to see if we have any questions in the Q&A or the chat.
No, I don't see anything quite yet.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Jeffrey. So I asked you guys, so one more question. I got a couple more questions for you. So I know our students participate in community service projects or community service screenings. Have any of you had an opportunity to participate? And if so, what were they, and sort of like where did you go? So I'll go ahead and start with you, Vino.
So by the time you graduate ICO, you are actually required to have some community participation. So I feel like the biggest way to get involved community-wise is definitely SWOSH, like Angela and Carly have already spoken about. You do obviously you do that mission trip, but you also do so many local trips. Like when I say there's probably 2 a month at least, and they're so gratifying. I've gone to a few and I loved doing them. You learn so much, you become such a better clinician doing them. So majority of your community service is coming from that. But apart from that, a lot of our attendings actually will go out of their way and do community service on their own. So I know Dr. Bakri, he'll reach out to us every now and then and be like, hey, I'm serving a particular niche community, students who may or may not speak the language. I would love for you to come in, help break that barrier and serve this community. So it's not necessarily something associated with SWASH, but our attendings actually take the initiative to do different community service activities, and they'll always reach out to students and send us emails and be like, if you're involved or if you're free, come join me. I would love for the more support. So I think that that's great. And then those can also be used to kind of fulfill your requirements. So before you graduate, you're required to do at least one community service activity where you've spent the entire day or a certain number of hours kind of helping out. So whether you do it through SPOSH, whether you do it on your own, or whether you do it through something an attending hosts, you'll get that fulfilled. So I think that's great. But I really found it really nice that our attendings do things on their own and they reach out to us for that. That was really new to me. And I just really like that there was different communities, different attendings from different cultural backgrounds who focus on those certain communities to make sure that everybody is getting the care. I just really like that. So I'm so glad I get to be part of it.
All right, Angela.
Yeah, so I actually just did one for Splash in November. It was for a place called the Rohingya Cultural Center up in the north side of Chicago. It was really cool. There was, I think, about 100 patients that came that day, so I did the whole shift. And I kind of just bounced around helping out like I did. I was dispensing glasses, helping people try them on. I was entering in like frame orders. I did VAs, I did pressures. So kind of you get to do a little bit of everything. And it was so cool just because also like it's at least for this specific one, there's different age groups too. So it's everyone from kids to all the way up to probably like 80 or 90. And just all the people that you get to see have so many different backgrounds and so many different experiences with healthcare and everything. So I thought it was just very unique.
There's a
Awesome.
there's a couple questions here in the chat. If we could maybe switch gears a little bit. What year would you guys recommend starting to join SPOSH? The first year? Pretty unanimous.
Yeah, definitely your first year because then you can start racking up hours if you want to go on the trip and it kind of spreads it out.
I think also
Great.
getting involved. Oh, sorry. I think also getting involved your first year too exposes you to more parts of the city, which is especially beneficial if you're not from Chicago. So like I started last August of 2021 is when I started, and I did my first vision screening in September of 2021 in a neighborhood that I'd never heard of before, which was just like really cool. And then if you want to do more community service outside of SPOSH, like that kind of gives you some cool ideas for places that you might want to volunteer in the city. So definitely as early as possible.
What is one thing that you guys wish you would have known before you started optometry school? And just a personal question from when you guys were talking about upperclassmen, did you guys know anybody before you got here? So piece of advice and just, did you know anybody before or were you a newbie?
I can start off with that. My piece of advice, it's not a race. I feel like when you come into graduate school, you're constantly comparing yourself to the peers around you. And if there's one thing I learned the hard way is that it's my path and it's my path only. I could be super behind on stuff. I could be super ahead on my homework. It doesn't matter. It's what I'm doing and how I'm doing it to get by school. Like, don't compare yourself to anyone. You're going to get really anxious. It's going to scare you. No one's going to be at the same pace. So just do you. It's not a race. You're not competing with the person next to you. If the person next to you gets an A, it doesn't affect you in any way. I promise you. So help each other. And I think ICO really facilitates that. Your question about the uppermen, I actually didn't know anyone at ICO coming in. I didn't really know many people who had done optometry. It was kind of a leap of faith. I knew my optometrist and that was about it. But after coming here, I have made so many friends that I can call family. A lot of them actually being upperclassmen. They were just so kind. Like everyone's mentioned, airdropping materials or being like, hey, let me send you some resources that I have. We are all surviving on our upperclassmen's notes. And I promise you that's going to happen if you come here too. Everyone kind of just hands down resources. And I think it's like an ICO tradition now. Every class has one note taker who has beautiful notes and they just pass them down every year. So I think that just makes a really big difference.
Anybody else? Any other evidence? I mean, advice?
Yeah, going off of that, I also didn't know anyone before coming to ICO, so it was a total fresh start, but like I got to know my class really quickly. I like seriously am in love with my classmates. They are just the best people ever. But as far as like advice, kind of what I was saying earlier, like sometimes you just have to learn that like school does not need to come first, which I think goes against a lot of what like the professors will tell you and everything. Because I feel like kind of coming in, some people, I don't know, I think I just like was really dramatic and scared and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do school all the time, always, never take a break. That is not healthy. So definitely something that I wish I had known before starting optometry school was that you need to put yourself first before school. School is super important, but you are more important.
Nice. Talk a little bit about housing. Do most first years live on campus in the RC, in the residential center? And if you were interested in living off campus, what are the resources to find good spots in good neighborhoods or near campus? Or how would you guys navigate living on campus, off campus for a first year?
As a first year, I live off campus, just a mile north, and I absolutely love it. There is an info packet that does get sent out with a bunch of like apartment complexes where a lot of students live, and mine is really close by. It's on like the Green Line. It's on a bus line. It takes Sometimes I drive. I share a car with my partner, and it takes like 5 minutes to get there. So there's like multiple avenues of getting there. And I'm pretty sure there's like at least one, if not two other students who live in this apartment building. I also talked to a lot of upperclassmen before coming and asking like what their experience was living on versus off. And I think an upperclassman eventually gave me this recommendation for where I'm living now.
Yeah, I agree. Like I lived off campus last year as well, and I kind of like not being from Chicago, like you get this like really stereotypical view of it, I guess, that it's like, oh, you have to live in a certain place to be considered like a good area or so, which there are so many like genuinely great areas around, but I was just like, oh, what do I do? I have no idea what to do. I am like this little southerner coming up to the big city. So I reached out to people in my class actually. We made a class group chat like pretty early on, because when you're accepted, you're put into a Facebook group, so you start to like get to know who your classmates are. So anytime someone like posted an intro and said they were from Chicago, I reached out to them and I was like, hey, like where do you plan on living? Where have you lived before? Where have you heard is a good place to live? So just talking to your classmates or upperclassmen, like Elizabeth said, is a good resource. But I would say that at least half, if not the majority of first year students tend to live in the RC, which is a great option because it's literally right across the street, the residential complex. I'm married, which is why I ended up deciding to live off campus. If I wasn't though, I probably would have lived in the RC. And I think that the people that live in the RC like don't regret living in the RC. And I think the people that live off campus don't regret living off campus either. So there's definitely like pros and cons to both, but you'll find a place to live.
Yeah, and I'll chime in. So, related to the RSC, that information, as you get accepted to the program, you'll get invited to join the SharePoint page. It's sort of like an intranet for the ICO community, and there are pages directly related to the entering class. And we do have information for the RC out there, and we also have information in our off-campus housing guides. So it's a guide that Elizabeth was referring to that actually is put together by our current students. And so it gives you options for different apartments, complexes, around campus. And so some students, like they said, choose to live off campus. I always encourage students, definitely asking Chicagoans can definitely give you some good insights. So Carly, that was great advice to be able to put it to the people who know the city the best, and can give you some options on, where you can stay. And then I'll just chime in as an administrator in the point of view of the comparison. I was having a student conversation with one of our current students, who's the third year, and we were discussing boards and boards prep, and the student made the comment about, seeing other students with their board books. And I'm like, you don't know if they're studying. I was like, do you know how many times people carry things around with the intent to do, and it doesn't mean that they're doing? So I would echo what our students said. Please don't, compare yourself to your peers. Everybody's trying to get through the program, just like you are. So use each other sort of as a resource, and not as I need to do what they're doing because I think this is what, they're doing. I see this, and I think that gets you in a bad place pretty quickly. So really realizing that you all are in it together and you're not competing against each other. I get that question a lot. Are you competing against is the student environment a competition? Do they compete against each other? I say no, but there are students who are high achievers and who want to do well, but it's not at the expense of their classmates. They also want their classmates to do well too. So that's sort of like, from my perspective of looking at our students and engaging with each other, my take on it. Jeffrey, I know some more questions have popped up. They were moving too fast for me to get to them, so I'll let you go ahead and ask those for our students.
Sure, and I'm also trying to answer some of these, like when fall quarter starts or things about the externship program. But some of the things that I think would be better served in conversation would be maybe talk a little bit about work study opportunities. So the question exactly is, does anyone have a job off campus, and what job opportunities are there?
I can speak to that a little bit. So I don't have an off-campus job, but I do work on campus, especially as a Canadian student. I think I can't legally get a job here. So ICO provides work study opportunities to all their students, whether you're international or you're American, which I think is phenomenal. I didn't expect that coming in, and a lot of other schools didn't even offer that to me. So on campus, you can work 15 hours a week, and I think it's a great way to get started with school and a job because when you're working off campus, you're expected to do a lot more work. On campus, I feel like every work study job that's curated or created is made in mind with the fact that you are a student and you are studying. So they're not bombarding you with so much work that you feel overwhelmed. It's very balanced in the sense where they'll give you a shift, you'll work, it'll be completely towards your schedule. If you're free from, let's say, 12 to 4, but you're not free before that or after that, your shift will be 12 to 4. There's jobs where you can sit and like do the work and then also study and only have to do the work when you have someone come in, or if there's like a certain list of things you need to do, once you finish them, you kind of have some free time to study. So you can work about 15 hours, you get $15 an hour, and I think it's a great way to either pay for rent, money for food, whatever it may be, and it's definitely very balanced. That was something I was afraid of, and I was like, I can't work while I'm in school. How am I going to study? But very balanced, and there's an ample amount of jobs available on campus. I feel like no one's ever fighting for a work study. It's based on what you like. There's a work study in every different department, so it's a great opportunity. I think everyone should do it. I love that this is provided.
Okay, thank you. So circling back around to the RC, we can take some of these all at once. So if you choose to live in the RC, do you have to live there for the full year, or can you do it quarter by quarter basis? And if you live in the RC as a first year, do you get to choose between a dorm or an apartment style, or is it kind of you're given what you got?
So I'll actually chime in a little bit about that. So typically, when you move into the RC, your contract is going to be a year-long contract. As a first year, you're going to be in a contract from August to May. But things do happen, so you need to work with the Student Affairs Office if, for whatever reason, you may need to move out of the RC. And so the school usually try to be usually is very accommodating to students and requests. So that's where you would work with, again, our person for the RC, her name is Deborah Albers, and she would work with the student if for whatever reason they're looking to sort of break their contract regarding the RC. So if you stay in the RC your first year, around this time, actually, January, February, the contract for next year will go out. So then you have the option of being able to get an apartment. And apartments are on our fourth floor of the RC. And they're 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. So you typically would end up, let's say it's you and 3 of your friends, and you decide to be suite mates in an apartment. You all sign the contract for that particular suite. As an incoming first year student, it really just depends. You can fill out on your form a preference. So you can choose, like, I want an apartment first, maybe I want to be in a single second. Third option is maybe a double as a single, and the fourth is like, all right, a double. You know, I don't want a roommate, but if I have to have one, fine. Depending on how many students are taking different doubles and singles, it really will be determining it'll determine where you're going to get placed. We encourage people to get the contract in as soon as they become available, submit the deposit and do the required paperwork for it. But this past year, and don't hold me for this upcoming year, those applicants who wanted a single room were able to get single rooms, and some were able to get singles as doubles. So that's essentially where there are 2 beds, but it's just one person occupying the room. So majority of students got their requests fulfilled. Apartments are typically going to be gone, but because we had not as many students staying in the RC this current year, students were able to get rooms as singles. So it really just depends on how many members of the entering class and how many students, upperclassmen, will be occupying the RC if you're able to get your first choice. But a lot of it's going to be based on if you can get that application in soon. And for any members of the entering class, you'll get an email from me once that information becomes available. And it's typically the end of January, middle of February, that we'll get that stuff out to you.
And just for fun, because I'm kind of moderating these Q&As, again, I'm Jeffrey. I work in the communications department. And just to speak on work study, we have a student blog. We have events that need photographers, even, little things cut out or whatever. So if you like to do arts and creative things, student opportunities are available in the department I work in. And then also campus tour stuff. I'm feeding you guys in the chat these URLs to this website that I made. And on this page that I just posted in is a tour of our campus. And our video guy worked really hard to make these 360 videos for you guys. I think the first video on there is of the RC. So as it clicks and plays, as you have time, visit our YouTube channel, click and play those videos, and click your mouse and drag around, and you can kind of see a little bit better idea of what we're talking about as far as the RC or the library or whatever. It's just stuff I was working on. I just thought it would be, an image is worth 1,000 words. All right, so next up, can we switch gears to transit? First, do you guys have cars? There's a parking garage with ID access. If you guys could mention that, or would you recommend public transit? How far is the CTA and the bus from campus, and how do you guys get around and handle having a car or not having a car?
Yeah,
I can talk. Oh, go ahead.
go ahead, Angela.
I was gonna say, I don't honestly think you really need a car if you don't have one or if you don't want to bring one. You can definitely take the L everywhere, take the bus everywhere, which is really convenient. So that way you don't have to worry about parking because parking can be kind of hard and it can be expensive. I do have a car, but that's because I'm from here and I go back and forth to the suburbs a lot. So one great thing that ICO does have is that they do have a garage. You do pay a little bit extra for it, but I think it's like a great deal. It's like so much cheaper than anything else you're ever gonna get. It's nice because you have to scan into the garage and then scan into the school, and then same thing going back out. It's also covered, so like if it's snowing or anything, like your car's gonna be safe in there. You don't have to brush it off. And you can leave it there like 24/7. So, if you were gonna be gone for the weekend or something, you could leave it there and it's safe and like you won't get towed or anything.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, so my hometown is about 6 hours from Chicago. I have a car here, but I honestly, if you don't think you're gonna be driving home ever, then I personally would not recommend having a car just because it's expensive, like gas is expensive, you have to pay to keep it in the garage. But I drive to school every day, except when there's a chance of snow, because I'm from Kentucky, so I don't know how to drive in the snow like a competent human. So if there's like any chance of snow whatsoever, I made sure to choose an apartment that was located right next to a train station. So I take the train to school if it snows or if there's like a chance of snow, because again, I am a weakling when it comes to winter weather driving. So the public transportation system is really reliable. Honestly, I think it's really safe. Like don't ride by yourself at like 2 a.m. I mean, like, that's kind of just common sense, I think, to get around the city. But I have never had any issues. I've never felt unsafe taking the bus, taking the train. But if you do choose to live off campus, I would highly, highly, highly recommend specifically choosing a building that is right next to a train or a bus stop. It's going to make your life so much easier when commuting to school, but you definitely do not have to have a car. It is very easy to get around the city without one.
I'll add like one quick thing. I don't have a car, so I commute to school every day. I take the bus. There's multiple buses that come at the same stop that take me right in front of ICO, which is great. It's pretty safe. You have the L and you have different buses. A really good thing about ICO is that they provide you with a shuttle service that drops you home at night. So I usually just have to like get to school, and I always get a ride back home for free. So if you live within a certain mile radius around the school, which is around like a 3 mile radius, which I think is like great. They drop you pretty far. You can get a ride back home once it gets dark, a little bit earlier in winters, a little bit later in summers. But I think it's so convenient and it's so nice to have that because they'll watch you go in, they'll make sure that you've gotten home safe. And I think that's great. Another thing is because of ICO's location, if like worst case scenario, you ever had to Uber as well, it's not that expensive. I Uber on exam days because I'm just like, what if the bus is late? I don't want to risk it. So there's times when you're just like, I'll just Uber it. And my Ubers are never unaffordable, I would say, just because ICO is so close to the city. Even if you ever wanted to go out on a Friday night or a Saturday night and there's a group of you, Ubering it down to the city, to a nice restaurant, to a nice club, is not very expensive, very affordable just because of the proximity to the city from ICO. So you're not paying $50, $60 in an Uber. You're honestly paying $12 in an Uber, which I think is great. So public transportation is great. You download an app on your phone and you just scan your phone everywhere you go. So it's really convenient.
I would just like to put a cap on the end of that just to say, some other questions were about how cold does it get in Chicago? Can we rely on the CTA to get out to the suburbs? And, part of big city living is just the adventure of living in it. Of course it gets cold. It doesn't get Buffalo, New York City cold. Very rare that do we have things canceled because of snow days. But it is wintertime in Chicago. And as far as reliability of public transportation, I just Google searched that because I didn't even know. Do you guys know? Does any of the CTA go out to the suburbs? I think, yeah.
You can take the metro train out to the suburbs. There's different lines, but there's not really like a bus you can take.
Yeah, there's the pace, but it's very it's a very set schedule. So like our CTA within the city of Chicago is running pretty much like every 5 minutes or so. There's a bus coming, especially during rush hour. For pace, it may be once an hour that you're going to get a pace bus. So if anybody is thinking about, commuting from the burbs, definitely you want to be off of a metro line, but you're probably still going to need to have a car then to then drive home from the metro line. So definitely keep that and contacts. And I saw the question about the cold weather. I always say to my folks who are in the South or on the West Coast, Eddie Bauer is your friend. You need one good down jacket and you'll be able to survive a Chicago winter. Oh, and some good boots too. And I say jokingly that pea coats are not winter coats in Chicago. You're gonna freeze. So get you a good down jacket, and you'll be good. If you have any questions, you can email me and we can chat about it. Jeffrey, by any chance, did you have anything else? And I do
Yes,
thank you.
yeah, I think we could end on this one, just going around the circle, because it's cool. We have a first, second, and third year representing here. So one is, what would be the skill in your undergrad that helped best prepare you for optometry school? And if you could just generally talk about maybe a pro and con of ICO.
I think the skill that best helped me from undergrad was just I tried to stay busy in undergrad a lot. I know some people that went off to different like health professions, graduate schools. They kind of just like tried to coast and keep their schedule as free as possible in undergrad because they were like, oh, well, like I'll be busy and, med school, like whatever. So I just want to take it easy now. I did not take that approach because I'm very extra. So I was involved in everything all the time and always busy. That really helped me coming to ICO. Constantly being involved and like working on my studying methods, like balancing time between school and extracurriculars, learning how to like be very self-disciplined really helped me coming into ICO for sure. I honestly, like, I'm not just saying this because, we're on a panel. I genuinely can't think of a con off the top of my head at ICO right now. Like, I just can't. I have too many good things to say about it. The biggest pro, though, is just the clinical experience that I've had. I actually did a program where I got to start in clinic a little bit early, like over the summer between my first and second year. So I am just like really, really grateful to ICO for the clinical experience I've had. That's my biggest pro, and I'm cheesy and can't think of a con.
I can speak to that and just add on. Definitely the biggest pro here is your clinical experience. I can't enunciate and emphasize that as much. Obviously, the didactic education will be almost equivalent everywhere you go. Boards are the same, so everyone has to teach you the same thing, but you probably know this from undergrad too. A lot of things you learn hands-on. There's so many different diseases that I've read about, and I've seen hundreds of pictures, and I'll go in clinic and I'll miss it. And I'll be like, but I studied this. I got an A on the exam. How did I miss this? And it's very simple because it's very different when it looks things that look like them in person. So I missed it. I learned from that mistake. I'm never going to miss it again. And I feel like at ICO, our patient base is so different. It's so broad that you're going to get to see every aspect of every disease. And that's what's truly going to help you learn things more so than your didactic education, because everything you learned in theory, until you see it in person, you're never going to remember it. You're going to forget it. It's going to be stored away in some corner of your brain that's not going to come to memory until you like miss it. So definitely biggest pro. Con, like Carly said, I genuinely cannot think of a con. Everyone always asks me and I don't have one. The only con I can list is school is expensive, guys, so save up. But that goes for not just ICO, every optometry school, but that's about it.
I have a quick question for the third years. So what are you doing to prepare for boards, and are you reaching out to other students and upperclassmen? And like, what resources does ICO have to prepare you for it?
So right now, everyone does like the KMK course, I want to say about 90%. So KMK is just kind of like the way you guys do Kaplan to study for OAT. KMK does a whole prep course for boards, and they actually just came to ICO this past weekend. So we had 2 weekends back to back where we were in class like 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. or 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. And they kind of just like taught us stuff and like walked us through everything. And that was 2 weekends. And then they kind of have like a program that you follow. So that's obviously an external thing. ICO actually has their own like boards program where all of your professors do like a review class. So they'll do a 1 to 2 hour review class for every one of the major topics. They'll post slides and they'll post a quiz, and you have to do that program in order, like it's part part of your curriculum, but it's considered like a boards prep course. I've gotten through about half of it, I would say. I'm behind on my schedule, but it's okay. And it's really been helping me because when you look at the material, you don't go, oh my God, I don't know this. You go, oh yeah, I remember this. And I think that's a really big difference because it's like you reviewing things and they'll teach it to you in a more condensed way now because they're like, you already know this. So that's really helpful. Another thing ICO does is they actually give you an entire month off before boards. So they've like done all the curriculum, and then the 1 month before boards, you kind of only have clinic where you're technically learning clinical skills that's helping you for boards, but you don't really have exams and assignments that are kind of stressing you for boards. You're kind of just studying. So they give you that time off to help you with that. So those are the 3 things that I think I've been using so far for boards, and they've been helping me. I'll be honest, I'm very behind on my schedule, but I don't think I'm panicking or scared because every time I go through material, I've learned this. I am not looking at something and saying, hey, I don't know what this is. So that's a good feeling.
Thank you. And do you feel like the clinical experience from year 1 helped you a lot more to prepare for boards as well on that side of it?
Yeah, definitely. I would say in year 1, you're very anxious. I feel like you are very scared. So you ease your way into clinic. And as your confidence in clinic builds, that's kind of more going to help your learning experience as well. So first year, you're kind of just watching and you don't really know what you're looking at. I'll be honest. If someone shows you the cornea, they're going to be like, what is that? I haven't learned about it yet. But when you're in second year, you're going to think back to first year and be like, oh yeah, I shadowed this. I saw it. Now it makes sense. It clicks. Things don't click in your brain until you've seen it about 3 times. That's what I've learned so far. So because there's so much repetition in clinic with things that you see, diseases that you see, that probably by the 3rd time you see it, you're a complete expert on it.
Thank you. That was really helpful.
You're welcome.
And I actually wanted to jump on that really quick, if that's okay, from the perspective of a first year, was that I actually know what I'm looking at now when I'm in clinic as a first year, because we're taking ocular anatomy in the winter quarter. So now when I go and I'm like looking through the slit lamp, I'm like, oh my God, I know what that is. But something that I think ICO did a really good job is, I think part of it might be luck, but I'm sure part of it is structured. When I started to learn things in my first year and now into my second quarter, things are matching up. Like when I see something in one class, I'll see it in the other class, and then by complete chance, maybe I'll just see it in clinic. I'll just see it so often, and I think it's on purpose, but it's been really cool. That's one of my favorite things so far.
Awesome, awesome. So what we'll do is I thank all of you who've attended. I know we still have some questions in the chat, but what I'm going to do for time's sake is I will stop the recording and then we'll stick around and see what questions we have for you. So if you want to hold on a second, I'll give it a stop.